Welcome. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating explainer based on the leverage code. We're going to be diving into a major mindset shift about how we actually view money, effort, and honestly, our own potential. If you've ever felt like you're stuck on a financial treadmill, like you're working harder and harder but somehow staying in the exact same place, well, stick with me. We're going to dive right into this and see how we can completely rethink wealth. So, I want you to answer this question honestly. How much of the money you earned this year is still going to be working for you 5 years from now? Just think about that for a second. It totally shatters this illusion we have that a high income automatically equals wealth. I mean, think about doctors, lawyers, top executives. Sure, they earn a ton, but if all that cash just disappears into living expenses, they're still trapped. The genuinely wealthy ask themselves this exact question all the time. They want to make sure their money doesn't just vanish, but actually goes to work for them. Basically, there are two totally different ways to approach your financial life. On one side, we've got the worker mindset. This is where you're kind of chained to survival, just trading your limited hours for dollars. And the problem is, the second you stop working, the money completely stops. But then, on the other side, you have the architect. Architects don't just work, they design. They build these intricate systems that multiply their money completely independent of their physical effort. And our goal today? It's to help you cross over from just being a worker to becoming an architect. All right, so here's our blueprint for today. We'll start with the silent wealth trap, then we'll define leverage, jump into the four forces, tackle the psychological barrier, and finally build the wealth flywheel. Let's get into it. Part 1, the silent wealth trap. There's this invisible system that quietly shapes how we think about money right from childhood. It gives us this supposedly safe formula. Study hard, get a stable job, put in the hours, and save a little bit. But here's the catch. That formula teaches labor, not leverage. It just creates a cycle of dependency. So to break out, we've got to completely redefine the word leverage. A lot of people hear it and think of risky finance or reckless debt, but it's actually an everyday superpower. It's simply the ability to turn 1 unit of your effort into 10 results. It's all about amplifying your effort and scaling your impact, rather than just clocking more hours. Moving on to part 2, the 4 forces of leverage. Now, there's a quote from our source material that really hit me. It says, "Money can work harder than people." Think about that. Most of us try to build wealth using our own 2 hands, our own sweat. But the wealthy, they absolutely do not. They use capital. They know that human effort has a hard physical limit, but capital, when you deploy it correctly, it can multiply itself exponentially, and it never gets tired, it never needs a vacation. So that brings us to force number 1, which is money. This is financial leverage. Basically, it's the ability to control a much larger opportunity using a smaller amount of your own resources. The source gives this fantastic example. Imagine you have $50,000. Now, you could just buy a $50,000 asset outright, right? Or you could use that 50 grand as a down payment to control a $250,000 asset. If that asset grows by, say, 10%, the first scenario nets you $5,000. But the second one, that gets you $25,000. Same initial cash, but a completely different result. Now, I know a lot of people hear the word debt and immediately panic, but the wealthy actually respect it as a tool. Think about the massive contrast here. Consumer debt buys depreciating assets, like, say, a flashy new car, which just drains your future income for a little pleasure today. Leverage debt, on the other hand, is used to acquire income-producing assets. It actively funds your exponential growth and secures long-term equity. The secret is that the wealthy ensure the debt literally pays for itself. And that leads us right into force number 2, people. Because, let's face it, no financial empire was ever built by one person sitting alone in a room. Human effort is a massive multiplier when it's organized properly. By delegating tasks, forming strategic partnerships, and building teams, you completely break through the ceiling of your own physical limits. Just 1 hour of your strategic leadership can easily direct dozens of hours of execution from a really specialized team. But hey, even the best teams need to sleep, right? Which brings us to force number 3, technology. This is, without a doubt, the most powerful wealth multiplier in human history. Technology completely separates your effort from your scale. Think about it. A piece of software, a digital explainer like this one, or an online course. You create it once, and then it operates 24/7. It serves millions of people all over the globe with literally zero extra effort from you. It never sleeps, and it definitely never asks for a raise. And the best part? The barrier to entering this digital economy has never been lower. You honestly just need a laptop and Wi-Fi. But there is a catch. You have to make sure you're on the right side of the screen. You see, the content you create becomes a lasting asset that multiplies over time, but the content you just passively consume, it disappears the second you scroll past it. The creators are the ones actually building wealth, while the consumers are the ones funding it. And remember, in the digital space, showing up consistently is way more lucrative than waiting around for perfection. Okay, finally, we have force number 4, systems. This is the glue that ties the first 3 forces, money, people, and tech, all together. A strong system transforms your isolated, exhausting effort into this repeatable, automated machine. Once you have a system running, your marketing, your sales, your daily operations, they all happen consistently without you having to constantly watch over them. You finally stop working in the machine, and you get to start managing the machine. Part 3. The invisible psychological barrier. So if these tools of leverage are so incredibly powerful and accessible, why isn't everyone using them? Well, it mostly comes down to fear, uncertainty, and these deeply ingrained beliefs we hold about what's actually safe. We've been completely conditioned to believe that having a single job with a single paycheck is the ultimate security. But really think about how fragile that is. If that one single stream of income dries up, your entire livelihood is suddenly at risk. True security actually comes from diversification, from building multiple streams of value and creating some real redundancy in your financial life. To actually start building those multiple streams, you have to go through a bit of an internal transformation. You literally have to shift away from a consumer identity, focusing on spending, entertainment, short-term pleasure, and embrace a creator identity. You've got to start seeing yourself as a builder, someone who creates assets, systems, and long-term value. The moment you make that mental flip, you stop seeing roadblocks everywhere and start seeing incredible business ideas and engines for growth. Part 4. Building your wealth machine. All right, this is where it gets fun. We're going to combine the forces we just talked about with the magic ingredient, time. The secret sauce to any wealth machine is compounding. It's a lot like planting an orchard. In year 1, you're just planting seeds, right? You're putting in a ton of sweat equity and seeing pretty much zero reward. Honestly, this is where most people give up. But if you hold on to year 5, those roots expand and the momentum really starts to build. By year 10, you aren't even planting anymore. You're just harvesting fruit year after year. Compounding takes those small, consistent actions today and turns them into absolutely unstoppable growth tomorrow. But listen, building this machine is really only half the battle. Keeping it running, that's the other half. You absolutely have to protect your wealth from these invisible, silent threats. Like inflation will just eat away your purchasing power if your money is sitting idle. Poor tax structuring will leak your profits. Making emotional financial decisions usually leads to buying high and selling low. And a lack of diversification, that just leaves you completely vulnerable to a single point of failure. You really have to build a fortress around your assets to keep them safe. And speaking of assets, there's this quote that I just have to emphasize. Salary captures effort, ownership captures growth. Seriously, let that sink in. If you are exclusively a salaried employee, your income is always going to be linear. But when you step into ownership, whether that's equity in a startup, owning intellectual property, or buying appreciating real estate, you get to capture all that future exponential upside. Ownership really is the absolute ultimate form of leverage. And when you start stacking those ownership assets together, you create what the source calls the wealth flywheel. It might just start with your earned income, which you then strategically pump into some dividend investments. Then, maybe those dividends help fund a rental property, and that property generates the cash flow you need to build a digital asset. See how that works? Eventually, these income streams start feeding into each other. The flywheel spins faster and faster, and it generates wealth completely automatically, moving at a speed your personal effort could never ever match. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, look, I just don't have the capital to start this. But guess what? You have something that is just as valuable. Time. Time is the great equalizer. Every single one of us gets exactly 24 hours in a day. It is by far your most underrated leverage tool. If you choose to allocate your time intentionally, like investing it in learning new skills, building systems, and creating content, instead of just sitting back and passively consuming, you are actively planting the seeds for your flywheel. Which brings us to one final thought for today. The strategies, the blueprints, they're all right here. But the execution, that takes real courage. It requires stepping out of your comfort zone and flat out refusing to accept the limits of that old work-to-survive formula. So I want to leave you with this. Who must you become to build wealth? What identity do you need to adopt today, right now, to take that very first step toward building your own machine? Thanks so much for exploring this with me.